The ranch was quiet that evening, the kind of silence that pressed against a man's ears until even the rustle of the prairie grass sounded like thunder. Dust from the cattle drive still lingered in the air, clinging to the wind as the sun burned low on the horizon. Jacob Carter, a rancher hardened by years under the unforgiving sun, rode into his barn to find something he wasn't prepared for. A woman, her white dress torn and stained with dirt and blood, was tied against the wooden beams. Her arms were bound tight with thick rope, and her face carried both defiance and exhaustion, as though she had been fighting something far greater than the man who might have tied her there. She looked up when she heard his boots crunch on the straw, her eyes wide with fear but sharp with urgency. "Don't," she whispered hoarsely as his hand moved instinctively to his knife. "Don't cut the rope." Jacob froze, his hand hovering over the handle of the blade at his hip. The horse behind him shifted restlessly, sensing something wrong, something that couldn't be seen but hung in the air like a storm. He stepped closer, his weathered face tightening. "Who did this to you?" he asked, his voice low, carrying the weight of authority. Her lips trembled, her breath shallow. She tried to swallow, then whispered words that chilled him more than any outlaw could. "I'm just bait." Jacob's knife slipped from its sheath, the steel catching the dim light as he lifted it toward the rope. His instinct screamed to free her, to cut the bindings and lead her away to safety. But her words stopped him cold. Bait? For what? For whom? His eyes darted to the shadowy corners of the barn, the hay bales stacked high, the loft above. Suddenly, the silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt occupied. The woman's breathing quickened, her chest heaving as she shook her head. "They're watching. They want you to do it. The moment you set me free, they'll come." Jacob's grip tightened around the knife, his mind racing. He'd faced rustlers, wolves, even corrupt lawmen, but nothing like this, nothing that left him feeling like a pawn in a game he didn't understand. He studied her face, searching for lies, but all he saw was terror mixed with a strange resolve, as if she had already accepted her fate. Outside, a crow cawed, startling the horse again. Jacob's jaw clenched. He turned his back on her for a moment, scanning the yard. The fences stood empty, the horizon bare, but he felt it, the way a seasoned rancher senses a storm before the clouds appear. Danger was near. He stepped back toward her, lowering his voice to a growl. "Who are they?" She shook her head, tears cutting through the dirt on her cheeks. "Men who don't forgive. Men who don't stop. They took me from the road. Said if I screamed, they'd cut my tongue. If I fought, they'd kill me slower. Then they tied me here. Said I was just a worm on the hook. They're waiting for the fish." Jacob's heart pounded against his ribs. He wasn't the fish they wanted. He was the shark they hadn't counted on. Still, his pulse betrayed him, fear creeping into his bones. The barn suddenly felt too small, too quiet, as if every board in the wall had eyes. The knife pressed against the rope, but again her words echoed, "I'm just bait." He stared into her eyes, trying to weigh the risk. Leave her tied, and she might die here. Free her, and something worse might spring from the shadows. He cut the rope. The fibers snapped with a sharp sound, and the woman sagged against the post, her body trembling from exhaustion. For a fleeting second, Jacob felt relief, but then he heard it, the distinct click of rifles being cocked. From the loft above, from behind the barn walls, from the very shadows he had mistrusted, men emerged. Half a dozen, maybe more, each armed and grinning with malice. The leader stepped forward, his face scarred, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "Told you she'd bring someone," he sneered. Jacob's stomach turned cold. He realized too late that she hadn't been lying. She was bait and he had just taken it. The woman's eyes filled with fresh tears as she looked at him, her lips quivering. "I tried to warn you," she whispered. The men surrounded him, rifles raised. Jacob's hand flexed around the knife, his mind already calculating. He had one chance, one heartbeat to turn this trap around. His breath came steady, like it always did before the cattle stampeded, before the first shot in a gunfight. He wasn't going down easy, and neither was she. Viewers, if this story caught your breath and left you on edge, imagine what comes next. Does Jacob fight his way out, or does he face a fate even he can't escape? Stay tuned, because this is only the beginning of a much bigger tale. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens when a rancher's instinct collides with a deadly plan. The barn seemed to close in around Jacob as the outlaws revealed themselves, their rifles glinting in the last light of day, their boots thudding against the hay-strewn floor. The scarred man who led them spat to the ground, his grin stretching wide as he barked, "Thought you could just play hero, rancher? You stepped right into it." Jacob's jaw tightened, his eyes flicking from the men to the woman who still leaned against the beam, her face torn between regret and hope. He knew in his gut she hadn't betrayed him. She was a prisoner in this game just like him, but that didn't change the fact that they were cornered. He shifted his stance, lowering his knife slightly, as if he might surrender, but his mind raced through the barn's layout, the loft above, the bales stacked on one side, the heavy lantern hanging from a beam. His pulse steadied, not out of calm, but out of necessity. He'd learned long ago that in moments like this, hesitation killed. One outlaw stepped closer, pressing the barrel of his rifle against Jacob's chest. "Drop it," he ordered. Jacob loosened his grip, letting the knife fall point down into the dirt with a soft thud. For a moment, it seemed he had given in. Then, with a speed honed from years wrangling bulls and roping steer, Jacob lunged forward, grabbing the man's rifle and shoving it upward just as it fired. The blast lit the barn with a flash, sending horses outside into a panic. Chaos erupted as the other outlaws raised their weapons, but Jacob used the distraction to hurl the first man into a stack of hay bales, knocking him unconscious. The woman screamed, not in fear but in desperate warning, as another rifle cracked, the bullet splintering wood inches from Jacob's head. He dove for the lantern, ripping it from its hook and smashing it against the ground. Flames licked across the dry straw instantly, smoke curling upward. The barn filled with firelight, painting every face in shades of hell. The outlaws cursed, some stumbling back as the blaze grew, but the scarred leader pressed forward, fury in his eyes. "You'll burn before you get out of here," he snarled, raising his gun. Jacob didn't flinch. With a swift kick, he sent his fallen knife skidding across the floor to the woman. She caught it clumsily, her bound hands shaking as she cut through the last coils of rope. When she was free, she dropped the blade, but Jacob was already moving. He barreled into the scarred man, grappling with him as smoke filled their lungs. They crashed into the dirt, fists flying, the gun skittering out of reach. The other men hesitated, torn between shooting and saving themselves from the growing fire. Seizing the moment, the woman grabbed the fallen rifle and, though her arms trembled, aimed it straight at the outlaws. "Back off," she cried, her voice cracking but her stance steady. For the first time, they hesitated. Jacob slammed his fist into the scarred man's jaw, sending him sprawling unconscious. He rose, coughing hard, and locked eyes with her. Together, without another word, they ran through the flames, the outlaws too stunned and too scared of the inferno to stop them. Bursting into the open air, they staggered toward the corral where Jacob's horse waited, stamping nervously. He lifted the woman onto the saddle, then swung up behind her, spurring the horse hard. Bullets whistled past as the remaining outlaws found their nerve, but the horse thundered through the smoke and dust, carrying them out into the night. Only, when the barn was a distant glow against the prairie sky, did Jacob slow, both of them gasping for breath. The woman leaned against him, her voice soft but steady now. "You shouldn't have cut me loose," she whispered, repeating her warning from before, but then added, "But I'm glad you did." Jacob glanced back at the fire on the horizon, knowing the fight wasn't over. Those men would regroup, hunt them down, and the truth about why she was bait would eventually surface. But for now, he had made a choice, and it was one he would stand by. The prairie wind cooled the sweat on his skin, carrying away the smoke but not the danger. He tightened his grip on the reins and muttered, almost to himself, "We'll finish this." Her eyes met his, tired but burning with determination. For the first time, she didn't look like bait, she looked like a partner in survival. Their story had only just begun, and together they would face whatever came next. Viewers, if this ending made your heart race and left you imagining the fire, the escape, and the vengeance still to come, then hit that subscribe button right now. Your support keeps these powerful stories alive, and there's always another tale waiting just beyond the horizon. Don't miss the next ride.